When Eilat Mazar realized she discovered an ancient structure near Jerusalem, she turned to the Bible to help explain what she found.
And she learned that this new discovery supports the biblical accounts of King David and his son Solomon.
King Solomon's tomb. Opened after 5,000 years. What they found. Inside is pure horror. Every ancient king of his era left behind a tomb. Ramesses II was found. Tutankhamun was discovered. Cyrus the Great was located. But King Solomon, the wealthiest ruler of the ancient world, remains an unsolved mystery. The king who built the first temple in Jerusalem with gold, said to be imported from 3 different continents. A ruler mentioned in the Bible, the Quran, and ancient Jewish scriptures alike. And yet, after more than 5,000 years of searching, his tomb has never been found. Not a single stone, not a single inscription, not a single confirmed burial site. Until now. Beneath a limestone hillside just south of Jerusalem's ancient city walls, ground-penetrating radar detected something extraordinary. A sealed chamber, man-made, deep underground, and completely untouched. But what they discovered inside didn't just solve one of history's greatest mysteries, it opened a question far darker than anyone expected. The legend of Solomon's lost tomb. They said it was just a myth until a forgotten tunnel changed everything. For centuries, people searched beneath the hills of Jerusalem, chasing rumors of a king buried with riches beyond imagination. A king whose name still resounds through time, Solomon. The man was known not just for his wisdom, but for building a kingdom so wealthy and so powerful that it left the ancient world in awe. Solomon stepped into power as a teenager, following in the footsteps of his father, King David. But he didn't just keep the kingdom alive, he transformed it. Trade exploded, gold poured in, and at the center of it all, he built the first temple, a 7-year masterwork glowing with cedar from Lebanon, gold panels that caught the sun, and stones so perfectly cut it barely needed mortar. The stories of his wise rulings are just as spectacular, like the one where 2 women claimed the same baby. Solomon offered to split the child in half, not out of cruelty, but to see who would give him up. And one did. That's how he found the real mother. That single moment turned him into a symbol of justice and intelligence across the ancient world. Even the Queen of Sheba came to see him, bringing caravans heavy with spices, gold, and riddles. She left stunned. Not only had Solomon matched her questions, but he had outshone every rumor she had heard about him. His empire stretched far beyond Jerusalem. Ships sailed to Ophir and Tarshish. Mysterious lands some believe were in Africa or India, bringing ivory, apes, and riches. In southern Israel's Timnah Valley, copper mines he owned churned out wealth that archaeologists are still uncovering today. But one mystery has always remained. Where is Solomon's tomb? There is no stone marker or chamber, nor is there anything to prove where he was laid to rest. Some swore it had to be beneath the Temple Mount. Others guessed secret caves or hidden chambers sealed off for millennia. Over time, the search lost steam with too many dead ends. There are too many legends that most experts have given up. But then something shifted. A discovery, accidental or fated depending on who you ask, would crack this ancient riddle wide open. And what they found wasn't just a tomb. It was a message buried in silence for 3,000 years, now clawing its way back into the light. What was inside? We were just getting started. The relentless quest for the tomb. A thin crack in the ground, almost impossible to notice after a heavy storm, ended up changing everything. For hundreds of years, the search for King Solomon's tomb was like chasing something that never stayed still. Medieval knights dug beneath the Temple Mount, convinced the answer lay below. Centuries later, 19th century explorers ripped through the hills of Judea, certain they were close. Every expedition ended the same way, with nothing to show for it. Some walked away believing the tomb was only a myth. Others blamed fate, poor timing, or flawed maps. By the time the 21st century arrived, most historians and archaeologists had simply given up. The mystery was considered cold. Then, quietly, that changed. Dr. Emily Carter, an archaeologist better known for studying brittle scrolls than standing in front of cameras, was buried deep in Jerusalem's archives when something strange caught her eye. Ancient tax records dating back to Solomon's reign. Hidden within faded Hebrew text was a subtle clue: payments sent to a location deliberately left unrecorded. A place near the city of David, a site hidden so carefully that even history itself seemed to lose track of it. With advanced radar technology capable of seeing through solid stone, her team began scanning a steep, unforgiving slope in Silwan. The terrain resisted every step. Sharp limestone cut into equipment, unstable soil slowed progress, and rising political tensions caused constant interruptions. Still, they returned day after day, refusing to stop. Then nature intervened. A sudden rainstorm weakened the hillside, exposing a shallow depression in the earth. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, but something about it felt wrong. It didn't belong there. Beneath that exact spot, the radar pulsed like a living heartbeat. The scans revealed tunnels, deep, deliberate, and clearly man-made. The team froze, stunned, as excitement surged through them like electricity. They rushed to secure the area, knowing every movement mattered. Each dig carried danger. They soon realized the tunnels were designed with false entrances, traps meant to mislead intruders. One wrong step could cause centuries of hidden history to crumble into dust. Dr. Carter spent countless nights studying fragments of ancient inscriptions, slowly reconstructing a trail meant to deceive thieves and tomb raiders. The symbols didn't scream for attention. Instead, they pointed quietly toward a concealed entrance, cleverly hidden in plain sight. Yet that discovery wasn't the real breakthrough. The true turning point came from an old story, a nearly forgotten legend passed down by shepherds. It spoke of a hillside that glowed beneath the moon, of a wall that shimmered like scattered stars. Standing on that very hill, Dr. Carter felt it. The ground was soaked, boots sinking with every step. The silence felt heavy, intentional, as if the rocks themselves were guarding a secret. It was different. It was real. They knew they were close. They could sense it. And beyond that sealed tunnel, behind a doorway untouched for thousands of years, something waited. What they uncovered next didn't just change the history books, it stopped them cold, leaving them speechless. Breaking the ancient seal. What if the only thing separating the modern world from a 3,000-year-old secret was a massive stone slab that was never meant to be touched, let alone opened? The seal didn't give way softly. It thundered, as if something ancient had finally released a breath it had been holding for thousands of years. After weeks of cutting through sharp limestone, choking dust, and lingering doubt, Dr. Emily Carter and her team had traced a fragile paper trail from crumbling tax records to a long-forgotten hillside in Silwan. Now they stood face to face with a stone slab buried so deep in history that it felt like the earth itself had worked hard to conceal it. This wasn't just another rock lost in the dirt, it was a boundary, a warning sign, and a carefully crafted puzzle all at once. Opening it was never going to be as easy as pushing or pulling. The slab was part of a much larger system, one designed to protect whatever lay beyond it. Hidden within the narrow tunnel walls were false routes and dead ends, some cleverly built to collapse the entire structure if disturbed. This was ancient stonework, but the thinking behind it was razor sharp. It was a defensive masterpiece, designed by people who fully expected grave robbers and made sure they would fail. As the ground groaned and shifted beneath their boots, Dr. Carter focused on faded Hebrew markings carved near the entrance. A precise sequence stood out: 7 lines, 7 symbols, and a carved pattern connected to the first temple's 7-year construction. This wasn't artwork or decoration. It was instruction. It was a message. Her team moved carefully, using laser tools and 3D scanners to map every groove, corner, and chamber, treating the site like a live explosive. The air felt heavy, thick with tension. One mistake could trap or bury the entire crew. For 3 straight days, they adjusted mechanisms, aligned ancient stone components, and held their breath every time rock scraped against rock. The farther they advanced, the quieter the tunnel became, almost as if the mountain itself was paying attention. Then it happened. A sharp snap echoed through the passage, followed by a deep rumble, and dust poured down from the ceiling. The slab began to shift, not quickly, not smoothly, but just enough to expose a thin, dark opening into something unknown. The team stepped back, staring into the pitch-black gap. No sound emerged, no rush of air, just cold darkness waiting on the other side. Dr. Carter lifted her hand, signaling everyone to stay still. No one spoke. No one moved. This wasn't just progress, it was history breathing again for the first time in thousands of years. But whatever lurked in that darkness wasn't finished revealing itself. The tomb hadn't surrendered all its secrets yet, and what came next would leave even the strongest skeptics speechless. If you're feeling the pull of this mystery, go ahead and like this, because the story only goes deeper from here. A peek at Solomon's wealth. The instant the flashlight beam caught a glint of gold, time seemed to freeze. No one spoke. No one even breathed. There was only the heavy silence that comes when you realize you're no longer chasing a legend. You're standing inside it. Deep beneath the city of David, in a sealed chamber untouched for thousands of years, Dr. Carter's team stood shoulder to shoulder, their flashlights shaking slightly in their hands. What lay before them wasn't rumor or folklore brought to life. It wasn't a story passed down through generations. It was real treasure, stacked carefully, piled deliberately, tucked into corners as if it had been patiently waiting. Along the stone walls sat golden vessels, their surfaces etched with ancient Hebrew, catching the light as though they'd been polished just moments ago. The air carried a strange scent. Thyme, spices, resins, earthy and sweet, lingering thickly in the chamber. At the far end of the room, a 7-branched menorah rose from the floor, solid and flawless. Its shape, its curves, its base matched every historical description of what stood in the first temple. This wasn't a replica behind glass. This was real, possibly original, and it felt like only the beginning. Every direction they turned, the chamber seemed to whisper its own story. Fragments of silk, faded but unmistakable, hinted at ancient trade routes reaching as far as India. Delicate ivory carvings spoke of negotiations and exchanges with African kingdoms long forgotten. Small jewelry boxes, some still tightly latched, revealed earrings and chains set with emeralds, rubies, and lapis lazuli. One archaeologist, clearly overwhelmed, leaned closer and whispered, "This makes the British Museum look like a thrift shop." Then came another surprise. A sealed clay jar cracked open, releasing a soft puff of aroma, saffron, frankincense, and something citrus-like. The spices smelled impossibly fresh, as if time itself had paused the moment the lid was sealed. It almost felt staged, too perfect, like someone had planned for this moment of discovery. Yet not everything made sense. Some artifacts bore symbols no one could immediately identify. A few pieces carried styles that felt newer or at least different than the rest. Could some of this belong to Rehoboam, Solomon's son, or perhaps another ruler who hid his wealth beside a growing legend? The excitement in the room was undeniable, but so was the uncertainty. And in a chamber like this, doubt doesn't stay quiet. It echoes. Still, each object, every jewel, every carving told its own piece of a larger story. Together, they formed a picture that felt lifted straight from Scripture. Yet, as breathtaking as the chamber was, it carried the feeling of a preview, not a conclusion. The team moved with extreme care. Laser scanners traced every surface. Nothing was touched without careful documentation, because a single careless move could erase what the desert had protected for centuries. The menorah alone had the power to rewrite everything we know about the First Temple, but no one celebrated. Not yet. They had come searching for a tomb, and this place didn't feel like one. Still, everyone sensed it. This chamber wasn't the end. It was the first layer, and whatever lay deeper had been buried for a reason. The unexplainable symbols and hidden knowledge. The gold was breathtaking, but it was the writing on the walls that truly brought everything to a halt. Still riding the rush from the treasure chamber, Dr. Carter's team slowly shifted their attention to something far more unsettling. As torchlight swept across the stone, a cluster of carvings came into view. These weren't simple decorations. The symbols seemed alive, almost vibrating with meaning. At the very center sat a sharp, star-shaped seal carved with purpose and precision, nearly identical to the one ancient texts describe as Solomon's mark. Not just a royal symbol, but according to legend, a powerful tool said to command spirits themselves. And that wasn't all. The carvings flowed outward in tightly packed geometric patterns, some clean and simple, others twisting into spirals and sharp angles so exact they resembled architectural schematics. One archaeologist leaned in and whispered, "This is math, but not temple math. This is something else." Ratios, angles, and structural designs appeared so advanced they made the 10th century BCE feel almost impossibly ahead of its time. Even Dr. Carter couldn't help but joke, "We came looking for a tomb and somehow found Solomon's calculus notebook." That's when they noticed the tablets. Stacked neatly in a corner as if placed there intentionally, a collection of clay tablets waited silently. Each was covered in dense Hebrew script, some worn by time, others so sharply engraved they looked freshly made. One tablet detailed temple dimensions nearly word for word from the book of 1 Kings, but another stood apart. The language bent and shifted. The structure broke every known rule. It read less like a historical record and more like a puzzle begging to be solved. That tablet referenced something unusual, a key connected to hidden knowledge. Dr. Carter froze. Could this be a reference to the legendary Key of Solomon, a text associated with rituals and ancient codes long dismissed as fantasy? No one dared say it aloud, but the thought hung heavy in the air. What if these writings weren't instructions for construction at all? What if they were concealing something far greater? Then someone saw it. A chest, tucked into a shadowy opening in the wall, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. About the size of a carry-on bag, it appeared dense and heavy, sealed with metal latches and carved with the same star symbol etched into the walls. There were no hinges, no visible locks, nothing obvious about how it opened. The atmosphere shifted as the team gathered around it. No one reached out. No one dared. Opening it felt dangerous. Too dangerous. But the pull was undeniable. Was this where Solomon hid his true secrets? Could it somehow point toward the Ark of the Covenant? Or would it only lead to even deeper mystery? And just when it seemed the chamber had revealed everything it could, someone noticed a detail in the carvings that didn't belong, a symbol that didn't match the others, a mark that felt out of place and out of time. That was the moment everything changed, when the story took a sharp and unexpected turn. The academic firestorm. It wasn't the treasure or the menorah that split the world open. It was a single sentence etched into stone that sounded as if Solomon himself were speaking from the grave. Dr. Carter's team had just finished decoding the strange star-shaped carvings when they spotted it, tucked along the tomb's eastern wall, barely catching the torchlight. 5 lines in ancient Hebrew, worn by time but still sharp enough to send shivers. It read, "May wisdom guide my hand as stars guide sailors." That line hit hard, not just because it carried the poetic rhythm of Proverbs, but because it felt personal, like someone, maybe Solomon himself, was leaving a message meant to survive millennia of silence. Back at base camp, the tent erupted with noise as laptops pinged, phones buzzed, and photos of the inscription zipped across the globe. By sunrise over Jerusalem, the academic world was already ablaze. Some experts called it the smoking gun. The style, the language, the location all perfectly matched Solomon's reign from 970 to 931 BCE, according to the chamber wall's dating. They pointed to earlier finds, the menorah, trade goods, architectural notes, and declared it the missing link, the man behind the myth. But not everyone agreed. Critics pounced, dismantling the evidence line by line. They questioned the carving's authenticity. Some argued the wording felt too polished, too flawless. Others noticed faint symbols near the prayer, hints of Persian influence, suggesting a later hand might have imitated Solomon's voice. Inside conference halls and online forums, chaos reigned. Professors shouted over each other on live streams. Journal editors delayed publications to weigh new theories. Headlines blared everything from Solomon found to holy hoax, and right in the middle, Dr. Carter stayed calm. We didn't set out to find a king, but the clues kept piling up. If that's not worth exploring, what is? Every line of that inscription now carried weight beyond words. It hinted at a king wrestling with power, looking to the stars for guidance, possibly leaving the only first-person trace of his rule. But there was still one question. If the carving was real, then who or what was sealed inside that final chamber just ahead? Solomon's name might have sparked debate, but what the team was about to discover could silence everyone. Share this with a friend who loves a mystery because the story is only just beginning.